Hello, I'm a husband in my 50s and I've been married for 15 years. My wife and I met in our early 30s, fell in love, and built a stable life together. Our marriage was ordinary in many ways, but we respected each other and rarely had serious arguments. I thought we had a pretty good marriage. My wife had always been a positive and cheerful person. She found joy in the little things, took good care of those around her, and brought so much energy into my life. So when her behavior started to change, it left me feeling confused and unsettled. The change began a few months ago after she attended a high school reunion. That evening, she got ready with extra care styling her hair, putting on makeup, and dressing nicely. Reunion tonight? It must be nice to see your friends again, I said with a smile. She returned the smile brightly. Yeah, I'm curious to see how everyone's doing. I'm excited, she replied as she left the house. But after that night, my wife started acting differently. We used to share the details of our day over dinner, but now she would finish her meal quickly and retreat to our bedroom. Is something wrong? You've seemed a bit tired lately, I asked. She smiled lightly and replied, No, I'm just a little tired. Don't worry. Her words might have been sincere, but something about her tone felt dismissive. I noticed she was checking her phone more often than before. What are you looking at? Something interesting? I asked casually. She quickly locked the screen and chuckled awkwardly. Nothing, just reading the news. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have thought much of it. But lately, every little thing she did seemed to stand out. One night, I woke up with a strange feeling. I looked over and realized my wife wasn't beside me. A faint light was coming from the living room, so I quietly got up and walked over. There she was, sitting on the couch, staring out the window. Under the dim light, her silhouette looked unusually lonely. Why aren't you asleep? Are you feeling okay? I asked with concern. She shook her head and replied briefly, No, I'm fine. I just couldn't sleep. It's nothing. She smiled as if to reassure me, but there was a subtle tension in her expression that I couldn't ignore. What struck me as most unusual was that she never talked about the reunion. Normally, she would share funny stories and updates about her friends, but this time she didn't mention a single name. So, how was the reunion? It must have been nice seeing everyone after so long, I asked one evening. She smiled tiredly and replied, Everyone's doing well. It was fine, nothing special. Her answer was short and matter of fact, but something about it felt distant. That night, her phone buzzed with a notification. Glancing over, I noticed the words reunion group chat on the screen. A group chat? Are they still in touch? I tried to brush the thought aside, but the idea lingered in my mind. Could one of her old flames have been there? At first, I dismissed it as irrational suspicion. But from that night on, every little change in her behavior seemed to reinforce my doubts. She began going out more frequently without offering any explanation. I'm stepping out for a bit, she would say casually, grabbing her purse and heading out the door. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, everyone needs a bit of alone time now and then. But as her outings became more frequent, I couldn't help but notice the uneasy expression she wore whenever she returned. One day I watched as she got ready to leave. Unlike her usual casual outfits, she carefully chose her clothes, did her makeup, and styled her hair in front of the mirror. A sense of unease crept over me. Going somewhere special? Meeting a friend? I asked as casually as I could. She paused briefly, glanced at me through the mirror, and replied, Yeah, just meeting a friend from the neighborhood. Her response seemed normal enough, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had hesitated. As she grabbed her purse and stepped out the door, my mind buzzed with questions. Is she really just meeting a friend? Or is there something she's not telling me? I let it go that time, but as the pattern repeated itself, my anxiety grew stronger. A few days later, she once again dressed up neatly before heading out. This time I couldn't ignore my suspicions any longer. Thoughts raced through my mind, refusing to be silenced. Could she have reconnected with someone at the reunion? And if so, what does that mean for us? Frustration and fear swirled inside me, making it impossible to think clearly. As she walked out the door, I asked myself, is it right to suspect her like this without proof? But not knowing the truth is driving me crazy. Maybe if I follow her, I'll finally know what's going on. That night, I made a decision I need to find out the truth. I waited a few moments after she left, then grabbed my car keys and quietly followed her from a distance. She drove about 10 minutes away to a quiet shopping area and entered a small cafe. I parked nearby, watching from a distance. She took a seat by the window and pulled out her phone, occasionally glancing at the entrance as if waiting for someone. A few minutes later, a man walked into the cafe. He looked to be about her age, dressed neatly in a button-down shirt with a well-groomed appearance. After scanning the room, he approached my wife's table and they greeted each other warmly before sitting down. I couldn't hear their conversation, but through the window I could see their expressions clearly. They spoke seriously, yet my wife would occasionally smile, nodding her head in response. Her smile, so warm and natural, felt like a punch to the gut. She looked more relaxed and at ease than she had with me in weeks. Who is he? Just an old friend? But they seemed too comfortable together. My heart pounded in my chest as my hands gripped the steering wheel, slick with sweat. My thoughts spiraled out of control. Was my suspicion right all along? Is she really seeing this man behind my back? Frozen in place, I watched from my car, unable to move or tear my eyes away. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of them sitting together, her genuine smile and the warmth in their interaction haunted my thoughts. My mind raced with questions that had no answers. A few days later, while my wife was out shopping, I noticed her purse on the living room table. The zipper was slightly open and a piece of paper peeked out from inside. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. But given everything that had happened recently, my curiosity got the better of me. Don't check it. Just leave it alone, I told myself. But doubt swirled in my mind. What if it's something important? What if it's something I need to know? Despite my hesitation, my hand moved on its own, pulling out the paper. It was a medical record from a local hospital, dated just a few days earlier, the same day she had gone out. My heart pounded as my eyes scanned the page, stopping abruptly at the diagnosis early-stage lung cancer. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. My breath caught in my throat, and a wave of cold sweat broke across my skin. Lung cancer? How is that possible? My mind reeled. My wife had always taken good care of her health. This couldn't be true. Yet there it was, in black and white. My pulse thundered in my ears as questions flooded my thoughts. Why didn't she tell me? How long has she known? Was she trying to handle this alone? Alongside the shock and fear, a surge of anger rose within me. Why didn't she trust me enough to tell me? Why did she think she had to face this alone? I quickly returned the record to her purse, trying to steady my racing heart. She must have been trying to protect me. Or was there another reason? Conflicted and desperate for answers, I made up my mind. I need to know the whole truth. I have to confront her. But before I could gather the courage to speak to her directly, I decided to visit the hospital myself. Maybe seeing it with my own eyes would help me understand. Walking into the hospital that day, my steps felt heavy with dread. Am I going too far? But if I don't do this, I'll never have peace of mind. My eyes fell on the electronic waiting list near the reception desk. There, displayed clearly on the screen, was her name, Ji-Eun Kim, alias, waiting in internal medicine room 3. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. So she really has been coming here, but why didn't she tell me? I paced the hallway, uncertain of what to do next, until a familiar figure caught my eye. It was the man from the cafe, the one my wife had met. But this time he was dressed in a doctor's white coat, holding a clipboard as he conversed with the nurses. Occasionally, he exchanged friendly words with passing patients, exuding an air of confidence and warmth. He's a doctor, so that's why she met him. But why did she meet him outside the hospital? I approached the hallway bulletin board where framed photos of the hospital staff were displayed. There he was, Doctor. Minsu Lee, alias Chief Internal Medicine Specialist. He's the chief physician here. Does that mean he's the one treating my wife? Feeling more confused than ever, I approached the reception desk. Excuse me, I'm looking for information about a patient, Jian Kim. I'm her husband, and I'm really worried about her health. Can you tell me anything about her condition? The receptionist offered an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, but even family members can't access a patient's medical records without their consent. I recommend discussing it directly with your wife. I nodded, forcing a smile as I stepped away. Of course, it's confidential. But why did she keep this a secret from me? As I turned to leave, I glanced back down the hall, watching as Dr. Lee spoke with a patient. His demeanor was calm, professional, and approachable. But it only added to my confusion. Did my wife rely on him not just as a doctor, but as someone she could confide in? Leaving the hospital, my mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. She's sick. She needs my support. But why did she keep me in the dark? Was it to protect me, or because she thought I couldn't handle it? That evening, I sat down with my wife, determined to confront her. I had to hear the truth from her own lips. Gia and I went to the hospital today, I said quietly. Her eyes widened in shock. Why did you go there? She asked, her voice trembling. Your name was on the waiting list. I know you've been seeing a doctor. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep this from me? Her shoulders sagged as she looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Finally, she whispered, because I didn't want to worry you. A few months ago, my health checkup showed something abnormal. After more tests, they diagnosed me with early-stage lung cancer. My throat tightened as I listened, even though I had already seen the diagnosis with my own eyes. At first, I was terrified. All I could think was, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to tell you? But the doctors said it was caught early, and with treatment, I have a good chance of recovery. That's when I ran into Minsu at the reunion. When I told him about my diagnosis, he offered to help guide me through the treatment process. That's why I chose his hospital. Tears welled in her eyes as she continued. I wanted to tell you, but I remembered how much you suffered when your mother was sick. I saw how it broke you, how you cried alone at night and fell apart after she passed. I couldn't bear to see you go through that pain again. I thought if I could handle this on my own until I started treatment, maybe I could spare you some of that heartache. I sat in stunned silence, struggling to process her words. But why did you meet him outside the hospital? I asked hesitantly. She took a shaky breath. Because I was too scared to come to the hospital alone at first. Minsu met me outside to reassure me, to help me build up the courage to start treatment. That's all there was to it. I promise you there's nothing more. I reached out and took her trembling hands in mine. Jian, you should never have had to face this alone. I understand why you try to protect me, but I need to be by your side. No matter how hard it gets, we have to go through this together. Please don't keep anything from me again. Tears streamed down her face as she clung to my hands. I'm sorry I was so scared of losing you, of becoming a burden, but I see now that I was wrong. I should have trusted you. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly as she sobbed against my chest. We'll get through this. Together, I whispered. From that day on, we faced her treatment as a team. And although there were moments of fear and uncertainty, we discovered a new depth of love and strength within each other. Together, we began creating new memories, moments that would remind us that life, even in the face of adversity, is worth fighting for.